Hey folks, this is Vince with Dad's Gaming Addiction, and today we're going to take a very brief look at Tokaido, a board game for 2 to 5 players and appropriate for ages 8 and up, with the average playtime being about 45 minutes. Now, I don't claim to be very good with geography, but from what I read, Tokaido is a popular or an historic road located in Japan. I believe it was called the East Sea Road or something like that. You can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sure I am. But anyway, in this game, you're going to be taking on the role of a traveler who's traveling across that East Sea Road. And you're going to be trying to get as many victory points as you can along the way. Think, it's like sort of like Japanese Candyland, but juiced up on steroids. So yeah, let's just take a moment to look at the components and see how the game is played. Alright, now before I get started, it's worth noting that my camera stand does not lift high enough to show you the entire board. It's pretty long lengthwise, so just keep that in mind. I'll do the best I can, though, to show you everything. As far as the components are concerned, there's not too much here. There's more cards than anything else. There's 2 different card types up here, there's 4 here, and there's 3 down here. Just suffice it to say for now that these cards allow players different ways to earn victory points. As far as the other components are concerned, there are these character cards of varying types, and they each have some type of special ability listed on the bottom, along with a player starting coin on the top right there. And basically, players are going to assume the role of one of these characters at the beginning of the game, and they're going to place these little player tokens right inside the little groove here, or hole, in the upper left-hand corner of the card, just to remind players of who's who. You've also got matching meeples and score markers to go along with those colors there. There are 5 different player colors in the game. The meeple represents the player's traveler as he makes his or her way along this road here. And these score markers, there's a score track along the top of the board that allows players to keep track of how many points they've earned. And finally, we've got coins here. Players will be earning and spending these throughout the game. Okay, now as far as game setup is concerned, I was mentioning that there are a lot of different card types, and some of them are handled a little differently. The yellow and the blue ones, those are your achievement cards. Some are earned immediately when those achievements are completed, while others are awarded at the end of the game. They provide the player victory points. You've got these 4 decks here, which match some of the spaces on the board. As players land on these spaces, they'll be able to draw from these decks. And there's a space for each of the 4 decks. There's black, there's this light bluish green here, there's purple, and there's red. And over here on the right are 3 different decks. You're going to shuffle these up, by the way, and just put them on their respective spots. These are similar to these in that they have their own spaces on the board, but they're handled a little differently. There are little numbers in the bottom right-hand corner of these cards, and basically you're just going to put them in numeric order. There's a 1, a 2, and a 3 in this particular deck here, this green deck, but in the silver one, I believe there's 4, goes all the way up to 4, yeah, 1 through 4, and this blue deck here goes from 1 all the way to 5. You're going to put these in numeric orders, all the 1s on top, then all the 2s, and all the 3s, and so on and so forth. Once you've got all the cards set up here, what you'll do next is each player will draw 2 of these character cards. And what they'll do is they'll go ahead, and these are shuffled and randomized, of course, but players will receive 2 of these, and they'll pick one, and they'll assume the role of that character through the game. And what they'll do, they'll also pick a color, and simply just place their color token into this slot, and they'll also grab the corresponding meeple and the corresponding score token and place that on the 0 space on the score point tracker. Each of these characters has a coin value in the upper right hand corner. Each player will get that many coin to start with at the beginning of the game. There are more coins in the box, by the way. I'll just show you that real quick. Here's the tray insert. There's more coins in the box, but this will be enough to suit our purposes. Last but not least, to set up the game, players will take their meeples, well, actually one player will take all of the meeples, they'll go ahead and mix them up and then randomize their starting location on this first inn. Speaking of which, you'll recognize an inn by all of these little orange spaces right below this gold space here, or this meal space. That matches this meal deck over here. Keep that in the back of your mind for later. But what you're going to do is you're going to randomly place these meeples onto these locations. And this is important because this will actually determine who will go next throughout the course of the game. You see, players don't take turns in clockwise order. Turns, whoever's turn it is determined by who is furthest back away from the Edo space, which is the last space on the board. So in this particular instance, yellow would get to go first. If things were further down the line, let's say these were set up like this along the road, green would go next, and let's say he went here and resolved his turn, then purple would be next to take their turn, and so on and so forth. Alright, now just to quickly go over what's going on with this board and what all these different dots and symbols mean. Basically, this is your road. Players will be moving along these dots, they'll be landing on these dots, and those represent the spaces that players can land on as they make their way from one side of the board all the way to the other side of the board. And depending on where they land, different things happen. Now, these little symbols above and beneath the road are there just to remind players of what that space actually does. You can't physically land on it. As a general rule, players cannot occupy the same space, though there are exceptions. There's these little secondary dots above and below. In a 4 or 5 player game, players can go ahead and land on these if there is a player currently occupying the primary space. But getting to what these individual spaces do, let's start with this black one here. That is the village space. And whenever a player lands on the village space, they'll go ahead and draw 3 cards from the black deck. And what they'll be able to do is they'll be able to spend any coin that they have in order to start purchasing some of these souvenirs. And you'll be trying to complete sets with these. There's 4 different souvenir types. And you'll gain victory points depending on how many you have in a particular set. Let me go ahead and quickly illustrate what I mean. Okay, now here's just a very brief example of a set that a player may have. In this case, this player has 2 sets so far. There's 1 set here and there's 1 set here. You can only have 1 souvenir type per set, and you can at most have 4 cards per set. There are only 4 souvenir types in the deck. You can tell what type of card it is by looking at the bottom right hand corner there. And whenever you buy cards or look at the cards from the 3 that you picked up after landing on that black space, you'll be able to buy new cards. The coin cost is right here along the bottom of the card, and you can see the type also in the bottom right hand corner. Now in this particular instance, the player needs a little shirt symbol here to complete his set. And I think that's what the player will go ahead and do. So the player is going to go ahead and buy this souvenir for 2 coin to add it to this particular set. As you can see, the symbols are all different, so this is completely legal. And the points the player will earn, again, depend on how many cards are in that set. This is a complete set, so he'll earn the maximum number of points, which is 7 over here. Now let's say that the player wanted to buy another souvenir. There's 2 left to choose from. There's food and there's a shirt, both of which are okay to add to this set. Because neither are food or this shirt symbol. So let's say that the player wanted to add, I don't know, both of these cards to this set. It would be legal to do so. 2 coin for each. Place them like that. The first card would earn him 3 points as for being the second card in that set. And the next card would be worth 5 points for being the third card in that set. The second space I want to look at is this temple space. Whenever a player lands on this, they'll be able to donate 1, 2, or 3 coins up to this temple up here. And they'll earn 1 point for each coin that they donate. So let's say that purple donated these 3 coins, which is the maximum number. he'd put them on this space right next to his particular color, his matching color there, and he'll earn himself 3 points along the victory point tracker. But this also plays a role at the end of the game. The player that has donated the most coin at the end of the game will earn the victory points located here. It's kind of hard for you guys to see, but the person that donated the most will earn himself 10 extra victory points, the next one 7, the next one 4, and finally 2. The next space we're going to look at is the encounter space, which is this pink space here. There is a deck for that along the top here, and I'm just going to grab one. Basically, this is sort of like a chance card in Monopoly. You never know what it's going to be, and it does different things. Sometimes it'll reward the player with coins, sometimes victory points. Sometimes you'll be able to take a coin from the bank and add it to your own temple space there. So, I mean, there's different things going on here. Once you pick up a card and resolve it appropriately, you'll go ahead and keep it, because that does factor into endgame scoring. There is an achievement card for having the most encounter cards. Next up, we have this green panorama space. There are those 3 decks on the right side of the board that I was showing you earlier. And basically, whenever you land on this particular space, you'll draw a card from the appropriate colored deck. In this case, you would draw a green card. If you happen to land on this silver one here, or this blue one, you would draw that appropriate panorama card. And basically what you're going to do with those cards, again, they're numbered from 1 to 3, 1 to 4, or 1 to 5, depending on what deck you're looking at. And as you collect these cards, let me just grab the entire deck. But as you collect these cards, you'll lay them out in front of you. And what you're going to be doing is, if you already have the 1, for example, then you'll go ahead and draw the 2. You'll go ahead, go through the deck, and pick out the 2 card. And then, if you already have the 1 and a 2, you'll go ahead and pick out the 3 card. And whenever you lay down a card like this, you'll earn that many victory points as listed on the bottom right-hand corner of the card. And the first player that completes a panorama card will grab the appropriate achievement card. In this case, if this player completed this set of cards, they would earn this and net themselves an additional 3 victory points. There is one of these achievement cards for each of the panorama decks off to the right-hand side there. But yeah, whenever you land on one of these spaces, just simply grab the next panorama card, whichever one you happen to need. At first you'll need the 1, then you'll move on to the 2, then the 3, and so on and so forth. And you'll be trying to complete the entire set in order to earn that achievement card and possibly some extra victory points. The next space on the board is this blue. It's not to be confused with this panorama blue here, but it's sort of like a more greenish blue. This is a hot spring space. There is a hot spring deck on the upper part of the board here. These just simply award the player with victory points. It's a straight out victory point boost. Nothing special to do in order to get it. What you see is what you get. In this place, the player would earn 3 victory points, and that player would move their victory point marker up 3 points on the track. The next space we're going to look at is this gold space here, and there's not actually a deck of cards for this. All you'll do is earn yourself 3 coin from the bank for landing on that space. Pretty simple. And that pretty much does it for all the different spaces that you'll see, except for these end spaces, and I'll go over them quickly right now. Basically, these serve as checkpoints. Whenever players land on an end, they'll grab the first available spot. The first player that gets there will draw so many meal cards from the deck. There's a red deck of cards up there, equal to the number of players in the game plus 1. So let's say that players were landing on spaces. Yellow would go next, then green would go, and then yellow, and let's say purple really wanted to get to that end, and he was the first one there. He would go ahead and grab 4 meal cards from the deck. Again, 3 because there's 1 for each player plus 1. And basically, this allows a player to buy a meal card if they want to. Let me grab different ones. There's actually different costs. There we go. Okay, so in this case, there are 4 meal cards. And the player, whenever they land on the end space and they grab the first available spot, and then the next player will grab the next available, and so on and so forth. And that'll determine the turn order later down the line. But anyway, getting back to these, the player will go ahead and have the option to buy a meal card and earn the number of victory points in the bottom right. They are all 6 victory points. So you're probably wondering then, why would I choose a higher costing meal if I'm going to be rewarded with 6 victory points each time? Well, there is, as you guessed, an achievement card that awards the players for having the most lavish meals, the most expensive ones. So, and it's worth noting that players can't have the same type of meal card from end to end to end. They'll simply keep the meal that they've eaten, keep it in front of them, but they won't be able to purchase that same card again later down the line. For example, if the player purchased this sashimi card, they won't be able to purchase sashimi again down the line. But yeah, the player with the most expensive meals at the end of the game will be rewarded. Let me see if I can find it. There we go. Yeah, they'll earn themselves 3 extra victory points for having the most expensive meals in front of them. So once the first player has chosen a meal and placed it in front of them, the other players will eventually arrive. And this is important. The other players have to wait for everyone to get to that end. Like I said, it's sort of like a checkpoint. So as they're resolving actions, green would go next, and let's say he goes there, and then yellow finally would go here. Green, at that time, would have chosen a meal to place in front of them, and then yellow would have been left with 2 to choose from. He would have picked one, laid it in front of them, and then discarded the other one and put it on the bottom of the deck. Now at this point, this will basically start a whole new section for all of the players involved. And they'll just simply repeat the process. They'll choose new spaces. In this case, yellow would go first because he is the furthest away from the Edo space. But he would just go, they would all just go ahead, take turns, landing on these spaces and resolving them appropriately. And when you finally get to the last space, there's an N all the way at the other side of the board, they'll go ahead and check their victory points and start awarding themselves achievement cards based on the different objectives in the game. So yeah, that's all there is to it, really. Players are going to be moving along this road trying to earn victory points, and again, once they reach the last space, this last inn here, they'll add up any achievement cards they have, add that to their victory point total, and whoever has the most points wins. Now, just to give you a brief idea of what some of these achievement cards looks like, I've already showed you some of them. You've got your panorama achievement cards here. There's one for each of the 3 colors, green, silver, and this sky blue kind of thing. And again, it's players complete sets of these cards, the 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2, 3, 4, or the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, depending on what deck it is. They'll earn themselves that achievement card. And these other ones award players for having different things. Like, this is the Hot Spring. The player with the most Hot Spring cards will get 3 victory points. The player with the most expensive meals, you'll add up all of the coin on your meal cards, and the player with the most coin will get this achievement card. You've got this souvenir card. The player with the most souvenir cards will get an achievement card. And this one with the most encounters. So there's different ways, as you can see, for players to earn victory points in this game. But you'll also have to keep in the back of your mind that each player has their own special ability listed on the bottom of these character cards. So you'll want to sort of cater your actions to sort of complement that particular special ability. And there you have it. Nothing fancy. This is more of a rough and dirty overview of how the game is played, but it should give you at least a general idea of what you're in for should you purchase into this game. I myself, I enjoy it. It's very simple and easy to learn. It's just there's a lot of things to keep in the back of your mind as you're trying to figure out how to earn yourself victory points. So, like I said, easy to play, but there's a lot of strategy because there's different ways to earn victory points. And you'll really think about what spaces that you're going to land on just so that you can start chaining the different card types together and possibly even earn yourself those achievement cards that I was talking about earlier in this video. So it's kid-friendly, family-friendly, highly recommend it. You can check out my full review at www.dadsgamingaddiction.com, or you can click on the links in the below description. That'll take you there as well. This is Vince. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.